Good evening. This is your host, Karen Hudis, and I'm bringing you the fifth segment in the Network of Global Corporate Control. We have just put the first four segments on YouTube, and I've gotten a lot of questions, which I'm going to try to answer during this segment. This is a series. We're going to continue for another 8 segments. And the reason that we've decided to do this broadcast is because we think that it's important for the people not only in the United States, but also in the other countries that belong to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund to know that these organizations were created in order to decide what to do with the world's gold that was put into sequestration. That's a fancy word for hiding at the end of World War II. And the idea was after 50 years, this gold would come out for the benefit of all of humanity. And those 50 years ended, and now it's up to us to do what we think is best for everyone. And the people who are supposed to decide this is the Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. That's the Ministers of Finance and Development. And the organization is governed by that group. There is another group that thinks that it has the right to decide what to do with the world's wealth. That is the Network of Global Corporate Control. That group has also been in hiding, and they were trying to stay in hiding. The way they did that was they bought up all of the media, and they have been censoring the media. But fortunately, we have the internet, and we have public access TV. And in one of the earlier episodes, I mentioned that one of the ways to find out who was winning was to see what people thought of the mainstream media. And one of the slides that I was going to show you this evening, we've run into a little bit of technical difficulties, and that's not surprising. We run into technical difficulties all the time, and when I say we, I don't mean DCTV. I mean the group that has been working together to defeat the Network of Global Corporate Control. What is that group? It is the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It's also the Group of 77. That's 133 developing countries. It's Germany, and it's the United States minus the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a private bank, and all of the central banks, 60 of them, belong to something called the Bank for International Settlements. That group is at the very heart of the Network of Global Corporate Control. And that group has captured the governments in something called state capture. That means that they have printed money. They haven't given any consideration for printing that money. They charge interest on the money. They expect the taxpayers will pay that interest. It's a scam. And they pay the politicians. And what the Network of Global Corporate Control has done since 1861 is they have had martial law in the United States, and they have used the legal profession to hide their tracks. And one of the things that the legal profession has done is they have taken away the courts that are guaranteed under the United States Constitution. When people sign their bank signature cards, there is a secret contract where they waive their right to those constitutional courts. And the judges are actually administrative judges, although they don't bother to tell the people that come in front of their courts that they're not real federal judges. One of the things that I did was I went to the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, and I asked them to acknowledge that those courts were actually not the courts that we're supposed to be getting. And the Senate Judiciary Committee couldn't be bothered to acknowledge this fact. That's because the U.S. Congress has been working under a second secret constitution that was put into effect in 1871. And the District of Columbia has been governed by this corporation behind the scenes without the legal profession bothering to tell anybody that this happened. But fortunately, a lot of people have been working on this problem, and they've been disclosing it. And we have documentation. For example, there was a study group in the 1990s in South Carolina, and this study group went back and looked at the State House records. And I'm very happy to make that study available to anyone that sends me an email. My email address is going to be on the screen for you to see. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have for proof of any of the statements that I'm making. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk about was a special man who's been helping me named Iksir Puz. He's been doing wonderful graphics. One of the graphics that I wanted to show you talks about the fact that there is 170,000 metric tons of gold on offer to the United States from the Global Debt Facility, which is one of the names for the trust fund that was set up at the end of World War II that contains all of the world's monetary gold reserves. And similar amounts are also on offer to all of the member countries of the World Bank and the IMF. 3 of the countries have responded, but we're not able to make this gold available until we have done certain things. One of the things we have to do is we have to inventory all of the assets. This global debt facility contains gemstones, it contains art treasures, and it contains bonds that were issued in return for gold. Those bonds were issued in the 1930s. They're called Treaty of Versailles bonds, and they carry interest which has been compounding. So the network of global corporate control actually owes us more than we owe them. The amount that they owe is in excess of $2 quadrillion. That's $1,000 trillion. And these amounts are staggering, but they are what that network owes us. And so what we did was we used a process that actually Benjamin Franklin had set up called the notarial protest. And we asked the Federal Reserve whether they actually had the gold that they're claiming in their statements, whether the Treasury Department had that gold, or whether that gold was actually in the global debt facility. Because that's exactly where the gold is, and that gold was accessed by John F. Kennedy. He signed the Green-Hilton Agreement 8 days before he was assassinated. And one of the graphics that Iksir Puz had done was talking about the fact that there is a gold certificate on deposit in the Bank of Hawaii, which is something that can be exchanged for the actual gold, which will be done as soon as I'm able to get back inside the World Bank and IMF, because the ministers of finance and development reinstated me, and unfortunately I haven't been able to get back in, and that's because of corruption in the District of Columbia. Commander Michael Reese arrested me illegally when I was in the World Bank, and one of the other groups that's been corrupt is Allied Barton, which are the security guards. That group is owned by the network of global corporate control, and they're illegally preventing me from going back to my desk so that I can do the paperwork to deliver the world's gold to the world's people. And in the previous 4 segments, we were talking about some of the things that I say things, it's actually shenanigans that the network of global corporate control has been pulling to try to prevent people from getting their gold that belongs to them. And after we aired the segments, I think it was actually the last segment where I discussed what the International Court of Justice did. The lawyer who prepared the papers for the Global Debt Facility was Ferdinand Marcos. And what the International Court of Justice did was they issued a memorandum saying all of the documents that Ferdinand Marcos had prepared were rescinded. And I responded to that by saying that in the first place, the International Court of Justice had no jurisdiction over the matter, because when an agreement called the Bilateral Mines Field Breakthrough Successor Agreement, when that agreement was signed, it said explicitly that the courts had no jurisdiction. And the other reason why the International Court of Justice had no jurisdiction is because after 50 years, any claimant has lost their claim under a concept called the Statute of Limitations. Now, who was the claimant in the case that the International Court of Justice was reporting on? It's a group called the Committee of 300. So I wrote some letters to that committee saying that they had no right to the world's gold, that under the terms of the Bilateral Mines Field Breakthrough Successor Agreement, it's the Bretton Woods organizations, that's the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, that those organizations are the ones that are going to decide, not the International Court of Justice. And I signed that letter on behalf of all the ministers of finance and development, and of course I copied them. And one of the things that I did just recently was I sent copies of all of this correspondence to the ministers of finance and development, and I said, if there's any inaccurate statement, would you please correct it? Otherwise, that documentation stands for the world. And that's exactly where we are. And so when we have these broadcasts, you can find out what's actually going on as opposed to what the media owned by the network of global corporate control is telling you. Because the media is actually just giving you propaganda. And I had mentioned in one of the earlier segments that a good way to find out how much progress we're making is to see how seriously people are taking the news that they're given under the mainstream media. And one of the cartoons that I wanted to show you tonight was a statement that's actually in the mainstream media where people are very bored at the non-news that they're receiving. They would like to hear what's really going on. They know that it's really just a charade that they're being told. Now, there was a second graphic that I wanted to show you, and we'll correct this problem. As I said, it's not unusual to have technical problems. Just yesterday evening on a Skype call, the Skype program had been mysteriously erased from the computer of the person who I was supposed to call. That's one of the things that the network of global corporate control likes to do. When I tweet documents, many times the links are broken. So what I do is I simply go back and highlight the fact that there was a document that the network of global corporate control didn't want people to see. So I'm very grateful that you're watching this broadcast, and we'll see if we can rectify some of this censorship, because it's very important that people know what's actually going on. So the second document that Iksir Pus had beautifully drafted was a statement showing that we have been under martial law since 1861. And one of the consequences of being under martial law is that our rights under the Constitution are suspended. And one of the other consequences is that the things that we think we have, the property that we think we own, it turns out that under this state of emergency, we're considered to be belligerents. Our government is considered to be at war with us, and they've taken away our property rights. So when you get title to your house, it's not actual title. What you're getting is a warranty from the state saying that there is title. Who's actually holding the title to your house that you have paid off, or your car that you have paid off? It's the network of global corporate control. But we've given them a taste of their own medicine, because what we did was we filed a financing statement in all of the Federal Reserve banks, and that said that the Federal Reserve banks are actually indebted to us, to the global, global debt facility. And these statements stand. Now, two of the secretaries of state tried to rescind these financing statements unsuccessfully. One of them, the Secretary of State of Illinois, couldn't read his statute, and he thought he had the right to rescind the notice because he didn't understand that the World Bank is a regulated bank, and under the terms of his statute, he's not allowed to do that. Now, there was a third graphic that I wanted to show you, and this is a very serious matter. Iksir Puz had heart surgery, and he's recovering now, and our thoughts are with him. When you see the graphic, you see how important the heart is. And we have to think about the heart, because when we take over our gold and when the rule of law is there, we are going to have to decide what is going to happen to the people who have been working for the network of global corporate control. We're going to have to decide what to do with the Committee of 300. And for that, it's very important for us to have a heart. And one of the reasons also is because we want a peaceful transition. And so I'm asking everyone to think very seriously whether they want to be in a peaceful world or whether they want to be in a world of conflict and war. And there's no guarantees. One of the things that people are asking me is, when is it that we're going to actually be able to have our gold, because it belongs to us? And the point of the matter is, I went yesterday to the meeting of the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability. I had tried to go the previous month, and the agenda was not followed, and I wasn't given the chance to talk about the corruption in the District of Columbia. But yesterday I did go, and I did make my point. And before I had gone to the board, I sent an email to Mr. Spagnoletti, who's the chair of the board, and I had copied all of the embassies in New York and in Tokyo, and I had also copied the lawyers, the American Bar Association International Law Section, and I had also copied the General Counsel of the DC Council. And what I had asked them to do was to say whether they had any objections, and they didn't have any objections. And so that means that there should be no corruption in the District of Columbia, and Melvin Gresham should not arrest me when I go inside the World Bank. And that's what I intend to do at the conclusion of this broadcast. Not immediately, of course, not in the evening. But I will be there, and we will see whether the District of Columbia police are going to be corrupt, or whether they're going to do their job and represent the people in the District of Columbia who do not want to lose their largest employer. I wanted to read some of the language in the letter to Mr. Spagnoletti. After my complaint of April 2 that Commander Michael Reese had illegally used the DC police force to prevent me from representing the monetary gold reserves of the U.S. and other nations at the World Bank's headquarters, the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability permitted the successor commander of DC's 2nd Precinct, Melvin Gresham, to do the same exact illegal, corrupt thing. DC Council's General Counsel Dave Zveniak lost his job the week I tweeted his involvement in this corruption. I had also showed how the International Court of Justice had retracted its attempt to steal the assets contained in the global debt facility and made it clear that there was to be no further prevarication or unauthorized interference by the network of global corporate control arising from the corruption in the District of Columbia. I also wanted to read you the letter that I sent to Dr. Yellen, the chair of the Board of Governors. Dear Dr. Yellen, the amount of gold that the Fed is claiming that it holds in Fort Knox, in the Fed's vaults in New York and elsewhere, is fraudulent. As I have informed Bishar Abdurrahman Hussain, Director General of the Universal Postal Union International Bureau, and H.E. Patrick Donahue, Postmaster General of the United States, there will be a peaceful transition to national currencies minted from the gold in the global debt facility and to local currencies as introduced by villages and municipalities. And let me say that this local currency is very important. That creates full employment. Getting back to my letter, moreover, the obligations of the Federal Reserve under the Treaty of Versailles, together with accrued interest thereon, are going to be offset against country indebtedness. Now, we've got just 4 minutes before the end of this broadcast, and so I wanted also to talk a little bit about Article 5 of the United States Constitution, which provides that when 2/3 of both houses deem it necessary, they are to propose amendments to, there can be a convention to propose amendments. And 2/3 of the states have actually requested amendments, and the Congress has refused to convene the convention. And the reason why we absolutely need to have a convention is because we are under a second secret constitution. And this is not something that should continue. It should be very apparent that we need to be protected under our Bill of Rights, which we're not protected at all. And people don't know this. So now I would hope that the people who are worried whether the convention would be run away will take to heart the fact that it's just to propose amendments, this convention, and there has to be ratification by 3/4 of the states after the amendments have been agreed at the convention. So this is going to be a very interesting time. We're going to find out whether the Coalition for the Rule of Law actually does exist. I want to thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. Next week's segment will feature whether you have title to your property that you think you do. And it's been an interesting evening, I have to say, that we've had these technical glitches. It's something that, that you have to work with because we are actually all in this together. Sometimes people wonder whether it's actually possible, these things that I'm saying, and I'm very happy to provide you proof of all of these things. But the other thing that you need to do is you need to get together with people in your neighborhood, with your relatives, and you need to sift through the things that you're being told and the things that you think are true. And you need to learn critical thinking, because as we move forward with our gold, because all of us are going to be given real, true currency, we're going to have to try to figure out how we could have had all of this corruption and we're going to have to work together to make the world the way we want it. And it's not going to be something that's coming from above. It's not going to be something that's dictated to you by the World Bank. So until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudes. Thank you for listening.